Welcome to the wonderful world of wine, exploring all things wine with you. We are your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lindsay, and you can find us on Facebook at The Wonderful World of Wine. Hello, folks, and welcome to the wonderful world of wine, exploring trending topics in the wine world. We are your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lindsay, and today we have two special guests with us from Wine-OJI, all the way from New Zealand. We have our special guests, Josh and Jessica, on with us today. How are you today?
Hello.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're good. How about you, Mark?
Everything is great. I'm excited, Kim, for our guest today because Wine-OJI.com is their website, and we're always looking for trends that are going on in the wine world. And there's been a lot of articles lately written about these guys and what they're doing in the wine world. So I'm excited to let our listeners know.
I think interviews are one of my favorite things that we do on this radio show / podcast, and especially when we get to speak with people from quite a distance. We've had people from Italy on our show. We've got New Zealand on our show. This is great. Yeah, I think you're the farthest one so far. And we have listeners all over the world. So kind of completing the circle a little bit here. So Josh, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about what Wine-OJI is? And I am pronouncing that correctly, right?
Yeah, you're pronouncing it correctly. Okay. Absolutely. So
excellent.
It is. Thanks, Kim. Basically, Wine-OJI is, we created the word, which you might have guessed by looking at the emoji word, and that gives you a little clue as to what Wine-OJI does. Our whole philosophy is wine without words. So Wine-OJI is a visual language for wine, and it was created right here by us in New Zealand. So myself, Josh, Jessica, and our business partner, Maciek, who is currently in Poland. So would like to give a big shout out to Maciek over in Poland, visiting his family at the moment. But Wine-OJI is essentially a language that can be translated anywhere in the world, and it represents wine. And we feel like it is a great next step to modernizing or making wine more accessible for everybody out there.
This is definitely a trend that I feel like Mark and I have been seeing recently. You know, sometimes we talk about short-term trends versus long-term trends, and this new focus on expanding the accessibility of wine and wine language and how we talk about and conceptualize flavors and textures and all those things in wine to further the conversation with other people who maybe haven't taken a wine certification course or haven't worked in the industry. I feel like this really is one of those long-term trends that we're seeing, and especially this move to visual is something that is really very exciting. And I'm curious as to how you came up with the idea of making this something visual and that wine without words, like you just said.
Jess, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as with many recent good ideas, there was a thing called lockdown a couple of years ago.
Oh, that, yes.
Yeah. And so really that was when this idea that we had came to life. We, of course, had to close our restaurant, which is our other business located here in Wellington. But that gave us a chance to really boost our online wine supply and consultancy through the our Noble Wines website. And it was really during that time that we were really trying to decipher for people quickly and immediately and also easily what was in their bottle of wine without actually being able to communicate with them in a way that a sommelier would in our usual way. And so that led us to really focusing on working on this idea and bringing Wine-OJI to life. So we've been working on this for just over 2 years now.
I was wondering the year because when I first saw your story, I had a flashback. I remember I'm super geeky and finding articles and looking into new technology and reviews.
It really is.
And back in, I don't know if Kim remembers or Josh and Jessica, you saw this, but in 2018, there's a gentleman, Blake Gray. He has a blog called the Gray Report blog. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but he wrote an article about using emojis and how we're living in a visual era now. And he saw this is the way wine needs to go. We need a more visual representation, universal type thing. Your site is your own pictures you developed, right? It's not the standard emojis that you're using, correct?
Yeah,
No.
that's correct. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Josh.
There you go, Jess.
Yeah, I was going to say that we sort of felt the same, that it seemed so natural that you would describe wine in images rather than words. And we spent a considerable amount of our time researching whether this idea had actually come to fruition anywhere else in the world. And to our astonishment, nobody had actually sort of formalized it in any way, which is why we were then so keen to push on with the idea, because we truly believe it's such a wonderful way to describe wine.
We found one small online site where a gentleman had tried to review a couple of Beaujolais using just generic emojis. So
Exactly.
there's no exact sort of emojis available to describe wine. And even at the moment, there's a bit of a push going on in the New Zealand wine growers for a white wine emoji. And there's a lot of talk and, bringing up all of this, we need a white wine emoji. And for us, we've spent years creating hundreds of little Wine-OJIs to describe wine. And so for us, the idea definitely resonates, and particularly from a service background. Jessica, myself, and Magic, we all come from a service background, and we see customers every day struggling to communicate about wine, and they get lost for words. They end up not saying anything at all because they don't know what to say or they don't want to be embarrassed. And the thing for us, Wine-OJI, was breaking down that sort of barrier and that stigma around wine and making it more accessible and giving people the chance to enjoy it more and start to broaden their own language while broadening their palate as well, because they're seeing images and they're associating flavors with those images, and they're learning as they drink or taste. And then they're starting to taste other things because they're recognizing the images that have been applied to different styles of wine. And so the growth for consumers is exponential because they can continue to explore the world of wine just by looking at exciting little Wine-OJIs, and they can enjoy that world of wine that we all love and we all understand a lot more than the average person. So for us, it was really about accessibility and breaking down barriers for consumers.
It seems so brilliant almost from like a psychological perspective, like you're using a completely different part of your brain when you've got that like recognition of, oh, I know that I like this wine that has these 6 or 7 Wine-OJIs, and then you see something else that is similar, like you just said, and then you're going to have that immediate recognition of, oh, this could possibly be a wine that I'm going to like as well, and you don't have to translate that into words. And I feel like we've always had this conversation around the translation and things getting lost in translation. And is your blackberry my raspberry? Is your dill somebody else's jar of pickles? It's like, how do we describe these sensations that we're having? And I think this move to incorporate that visual aspect is super smart.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I mean, we feel that Wine-OJI, it transcends language. I mean, anyone can recognize a lemon no matter what language you speak. And so for us, that sort of feeling, you taste with your eyes, and when you see something, you immediately start to salivate. And we feel that the connection between visual and taste is really important. And the other thing that we highlighted around the idea, I'm sure Jessica can second this, is that the language of wine has for so long, it's been quite inflated, or it's quite hard to understand for a lot of people out there. And so we wanted to simplify it in a way that was fun. I think we did a bit of research and found some articles around this topic as well. And people like Jancis Robinson have written articles on changing the language of wine and actually starting to make it more accessible just for everybody. So they were the big drivers behind our idea as well.
And I like that you mentioned the exact review about the Beaujolais. That was in the article I read way back in 2018 as well, Josh. So I'm glad you saw that as well.
That was literally all we could find, Mark. We couldn't find anywhere else that anyone had done what we were looking to do. The big thing for us is that we didn't want to be another wine reviewer. I feel that the world has got enough of those. So essentially we don't call what we do reviewing, do we? We call it profiling.
Yeah, it's profiling of a wine. So essentially looking at a wine, tasting a wine as a panel, and assigning the Wine-OJIs to that wine that we believe truly represent exactly what's in the bottle. And that's a really important part of our philosophy. It's not about essentially rating the wine out of a certain number or giving it a certain score. We actually don't relate the score at all within our profiling system. It's all about reflecting aromas and flavors and really deciphering the structural components, the key components of the wine for people to truly understand and relate their taste profile to the wine in front of them. And that's really probably our core point of difference to the traditional wine review system that currently exists worldwide.
And our listeners know that Kim and I are big on for our listeners to learn their profile and to be able to identify when you go someplace, restaurant or retail, how to tell people what you like, and visually showing them what you like is a perfect way to do it. Mm-hmm. You guys were both in the service industry. So when you were developing it, were you thinking more for wineries, for trade use, for consumer? How were you thinking about it? How does it help all of those fields?
I think for us, the core for us was that in the first instance, we want to help the consumer understand wine in a better, more enjoyable way so that they engage with it in a more enjoyable way. But actually, the further that we have developed our understanding of our own business, of Wine-OJI and where it can take us, the more we realize that actually we can engage with at all points along the supply chain, right from the wine producer, even at their cellar door, they can utilize Wine-OJI to converse better with their consumers and sort of bring themselves closer to the consumer. But right through distribution, you're thinking supermarket, retail stores, point of sale, and then to through restaurants and any other kind of hospitality venue or establishment where you have people who are engaged with wine in the wine world, directly communicating with consumers who are, essentially there to enjoy their product. And then to the consumer themselves. So you're talking standing in front of a shelf of wine at the supermarket, deciding what to buy, or even being at home drinking wine with their partner or family or friends, and understanding why they enjoy that wine or why they don't. And so that's really what Wine-OJI does. It engages with all people along the whole chain in order to sort of communicate about wine in a better way.
And do you envision this on sort of a bottle by bottle basis, like more of an analog approach where on a shelf there would be a Wine-OJI graphic, or is this more a way that people can access virtually information through your website or through an app? Because we know that this sort of development of technology around wine seems to be moving at a very, very quick pace, and just wondering how to fit in so many wines in the entire world. How do you make this a product that is applicable for that everyday consumer who maybe has a hard time figuring out even where to start with being able to figure out, what do I call this wine? I need to look at who the producer information.
Oh, sorry, you're just cutting out at the end there, Kim, but I think we got the most of that question, and it's a good question. Funnily that you should mention it, but we do and have just currently concluded a customer-facing trial in a local supermarket. So our supermarkets are able to sell wine and beer, not spirits. But we engaged in a trial and profiled a number of wines, around 60 different wines, and created the individual profiles for each of those wines, mm-hmm. and had them on shelf. So we're talking the little shelf talkers that go around a price tag. And each of those wines was tasted by us as a panel. And then we translated the applicable Wine-OJIs that we felt represented the wines, put them into this trial over a period of weeks. It was about 6 weeks that we had the trial. And we've been analysing the sales data from trial, and also gaining firsthand feedback from customers and the staff in the store. And we've seen really positive results so far. So the trial for retail and consumer-facing Wine-OJI shelf talkers was positive. On the whole, it increased sales, but also one of the most important things for us was that customer engagement was higher. Customers have actually asked to have it back in store. And
you put it there and then took it away, and they got upset.
Yeah. The staff, also the liquor manager on site, actually asked the owner of the store, when is Wine-OJI coming back in store?
Good for you guys.
We've reinstated it in store there. But the other one is we are a business. And so to answer your question, we see Wine-OJI as servicing the wine industry and wineries or distributors. There will be a charge in that regard to profile and develop digital marketing platforms for individual wines and wineries. But consumers in the end will benefit the most by access to our website, which will always be free in that regard, and be able to then search wines or styles or dishes that they're having for dinner. So they can actually search in something that they may be having for dinner, and wine profiles or Wine-OJI profiles actually populate according to what they're cooking. So we are looking at that technology side. We did discuss an app, and it was probably a little bit early on, but it's not something we're discounting, as we are aware that, the world moves quickly, and wine traditionally has moved really slowly. If you look at other beverages, particularly craft spirits and craft beer, the marketing around those beverages is far more modern than most wine. And so I think wine is catching up, and it's catching up quickly. And we're aware of that. And we feel that Wine-OJI does fit nicely into a more modern world and a more modern language that we've created for wine. So yeah, that's where we sit at the moment. And in terms of consumer and customer facing retail, we are breaking that market in New Zealand.
Very cool. I like your focus on starting with the trade and starting with the actual either producers or distributors of the wines, and having that be the focus of where to start with your descriptions for individual wines. I think that is an area that hopefully will help you get the most bang for your buck, and that more people will see the product as it is distributed through those channels as opposed to just through individual retail stores. So it's I think a clever way to look at it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I would say the whole point of distribution is exactly that. You distribute product, but you can also distribute ideas, also streamline and simplify systems through distribution. And what we found, actually, the more distributors that we've spoken to, the more they see that Wine-OJI will actually help them to do their jobs better and faster and more easily. So therefore, if it benefits them, they're actually more inclined to work with, the higher powers within their own companies to try and get this off the ground, which benefits us, of course, but really it benefits them, and therefore ultimately both producer and consumer of the wine, because the whole supply chain is working in a more efficient way. And that's really key part of our growth as well as we move forward.
Thank you for listening to The Wonderful World of Wine. We are your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. And today we have two very special guests, Josh Poynton and Jessica Wood from Wine-OJI.com. That's WINEOJI.com. If you want more information about Kim, you can find her on CommonwealthWineSchool.com. For more information about myself, you can go to franklinliquors.com. We're here every week on Franklin Radio, WFPR 102.9 FM. You can find our past episodes on SoundCloud and iTunes. Kim and I always look forward to your questions on Facebook on The Wonderful World of Wine. We're back with Josh and Jessica talking Wine-OJI. And I have to follow up. We talked about you have your own language and your own graphics. And I wish our users would try this. If they go on their phone and use standard emojis and try to do a wine review, because way back when I first heard about all this, I tried this, Kim and everybody. I tried to do a review, and I used like a nose symbol and put a cherry. I put a grape, and then I put a lip sync symbol, and I put chocolate and cherry. You're very limited with the standard thing. So when you go on Wine-OJI.com, they have like a primary, secondary, and they have food, all of their own emojis to use and select. And Josh was talking about food, or Jessica was talking about food pairings. I was kind of freaked out, guys, when I saw kangaroo on your...
I had the same thought. I liked the pavlova at the bottom, though.
Excellent.
We argue in Australia.
I think kangaroo for us is a bit of a nod to our friends over the ditch.
Sure.
Kangaroo meat is actually very widely consumed in Australia. And so when you're looking at things like Barossa, Shiraz, and those bigger kind of bolder red wines from most of the south of Australia there, kangaroo is actually a great food match. And also there's lots of barbecues and things like that going on. So yeah, it opens up the sort of food match selection that we're able to provide for our profiling. We currently have on the website, and as part of our Wine-OJI library, 221 individual Wine-OJI icons or Wine-OJI images to describe what's in the bottle. So that that makes up our wine language. Currently growing, we started with 190, so we've already updated that to a 2.0 version. And the more wine we profile and the different styles around the world, the more those will grow. And the Wine-OJIs we hold them very close to our heart. That was really where we started this whole business, when we decided how we wanted to look at Wine-OJI. Each icon, some of those take 2 to 3 weeks really with our graphic design studio to get absolutely right. The key with this is you have to be able to recognize them very easily and quickly, so that a broad range of people from any background can understand the majority of them on the profile. So we're not expecting 100% understanding of everyone, but actually during the prototype part of our startup was actually getting these out to people without any words attached to them and seeing if they could recognize those images. And we had about an 85% success rate. So we took that as a win. And we really feel that some of those Wine-OJIs are very representative of their flavor or aroma. Mm-hmm. And some leave it up to the imagination to guess alongside other Wine-OJIs within the profile what it could be. And then that's when you are able to refer to yourself to the Wine-OJI website to actually decipher what they are as well.
Is that where all the flowers come in? You have a lot of flowers.
We do. Well, wine is very aromatic and can be. There's lots of different florals for different styles of wine. And that's one of our favorite sections, I would say, of the Wine-OJI library itself.
Yeah, I think when creating those Wine-OJIs, it was a process that was several months in the making. And I'm not sure, on the website, we've got a couple of products there, which are the classic wine style cards. So you've got the classic wine styles of New Zealand and classic wines of the world. Disclaimer, there are more classic wines of the world. We just couldn't fit any more in the pack. But we came up with these wines in these regions and we selected them. And that's actually how we created the library, by going through, let's say, Chablis or Ningxia in China, and basically getting the classic profile of those wines. And that's how we actually came to creating 190 little individual Wine-OJIs, because we needed them to describe the classic styles of the world, basically. And that was the creation. But we used a local graphic designer, and she painstakingly and patiently created those for us. So every single little Wine-OJI icon you see has actually been created specifically for our library. So we're pretty proud of that feat. And we think it gives us that unique point where we can, as you said, Mark, describe a wine in detail using images rather than just dragging whatever emojis you can off the current available list. And so it means we can give consumers a really accurate description of what is in the bottle. And I think you touched on it earlier, Kim, around people's profiles, or maybe it was you, Mark, and people understanding their own individual wine profiles. And what we feel that Wine-OJI will give them is that they will slowly start to learn that if they like things like citrus or green orchard fruits like green apple, they'll start to understand that their palate probably naturally sort of gravitates to maybe a cooler climate. And all of a sudden they're learning all of these things without actually feeling like they're learning. Mm-hmm. But subliminally, people are actually learning more about wine, enjoying more of what they love and discovering more, all by just having fun and looking at Wine-OJIs. So we feel the opportunity is there for people to grow grow their love of wine and sort of join us in what we love so much.
I think the discovery part of it is really important. You can talk to someone or talk at someone all day long in a class, but the experiential part of tasting the wine and then being able to translate it into a language that makes sense for you, I think is much more impactful for people. And then being able to then take that next step and start to understand what it is about these particular styles of wine that someone might gravitate towards. And you're right that the way that you're doing it almost makes it feel like a natural progression and not like, hey, I'm learning, but I'm discovering something about myself and about my tastes. And I think that that's just a really cool way of doing it.
Yeah, we used to, you've done wine courses and it looks like education as well. And we, for a number of years, taught WSET students here in Wellington as well. And both Jessica and myself and Magic have all been through and currently going through Diploma of Wine. And so we've been in the learning seat and we've been in the teaching seat. And time and time again, I had students crying out for something like Wine-OJI to help them study or to help them remember different styles of wine across the world. And honestly, if we had Wine-OJI when we were teaching, it would have been a far easier way to get somebody to remember what is a classic, Beaujolais Village or something like that. And I think all of the signs pointed to this idea over the last 6 years that we've been operating here in Wellington. Just took that time for us to get there. But yeah, the excitement and discovery part for us and seeing consumers and our customers understand more about what's in their glass is what gives us the most pleasure when we see what we've created.
I think as well, the flip side to that is that, we were talking about learning and teaching of wine, and all of us in this interview right now, we would consider ourselves as wine geeks. We're the ones know exactly what the oak barrel was, where the Chardonnay was, in which particular vintage, and what the dog's name was. Not everybody wants to know that detailed information about the wine. Some people just want to open a bottle of wine and ensure that they enjoy what they drink. And so really it's speaking to those people as well. But on the flip side of that, within our industry, from a service perspective, is how many times do you find a new wine and you go to the website and you're trying to find out some information about it, and it's actually so hard to find anything about what this wine will actually taste like.
Right.
And so Wine-OJI can even help in that perspective for sommeliers or wine professionals or anyone in retail who has a bottle store sort of online website. How can they describe this wine in an easy to understand way? And then the on point of that is that as a consumer, if you find a wine that you enjoy because it has green apple and citrus flavors, it will help you to migrate to potentially different styles that you've never tried before, because you can recognize those same Wine-OJIs or same images in another bottle of wine, for example, an Albariño or something with freshness and acidity to it. And so it might actually persuade you to broaden your horizons and try something you've never tried before as well.
I found it almost an educational game when you go to the site to see all the symbols. On your site, you have a key for all the images, correct? To tell you what they are. And it was almost fun to try to figure it out before you looked over and see what it really meant. But when you do retail, is there a key there to people to look and see what that symbol is? Or are you just assuming over time they'll know that what it is?
Okay, so that, like the shelf talkers we were talking about before?
Yeah, like at a retail, if I see a shelf talker and I'm new to wine, how do they interpret if they see a symbol? Is there a reference key that's like a bigger chart in the aisle or something? Or like it is on the website?
So the first thing is that we have large format Wine-OJI libraries printed, so they're currently in A3, and placed around the shelves of the, within the aisles of the supermarket store. So that's the first sort of reference point. But secondly, on the shelf talker itself, right underneath that wine around the price tag is a QR code, and you can scan the QR code, which takes you directly to that profile of that particular wine on our wineoji.com website. So on there is then a written profile of the wine. So next to the bottle shot with the profile are actually the key words which are written. So if you've got a Wine-OJI of a green apple, that next to it is written green apple. And so the whole profile is then put into words for this part only. However, once you're on the website, you can then migrate to the library itself, and it will bring up the piece you've seen, which is the page with all of our Wine-OJIs on it. So it really depends how much you want to explore. But yes, standing in a supermarket in front of a wine, you can find out exactly what those Wine-OJIs are.
I did explore the website, and obviously for good reason, you have a ton of New Zealand wines on there. I searched USA and I did find a Bogle Chardonnay, which I have on my shelf, and I printed it out.
Why are you chuckling?
We love doing that profile because it's so not New Zealand, because we are a moderate to cool climate country for wine growing. We love doing that Bogle Chardonnay profile because it just gave us so much scope to use Wine-OJIs that we weren't using so much.
Oh, that's awesome. So because the style is so unusual that you just it's an unusual wine for you.
Well, it's just the riper flavors and bigger, broader. It looked great on the shelf. It was actually one of the wines in the trial. We put the shelf talker up, and it did improve sales as well for that wine. So we put that profile up, and we loved. I remember talking about that wine and going, "This looks great" when we actually did the profile. So
the aroma, the flavor, and the food, they're all individual pictures of what you should expect. But the sweetness, acidity, body, oak, and finish, they're like scale, which I like. So there's
I like that you have that textural component in there, because that's something that I'm always hammering home to my students is there's a difference between the feel of the wine in your mouth versus the flavors that we're talking about. And I love that you differentiate between those two things in your emoji profiles.
I think you've touched on a good point. Sorry to cut in on you there, Mark, but the structural component was important to us to still appeal to more potentially serious wine drinkers, when it's all very well looking at aromas and flavors and they look great and they're bright and they're modern. But I think wine is all about structure. And for us to be able to define and differentiate in some small ways quality of wine as well, the structural component will always be present on all Wine-OJI profiles, and it is scalable. And so the other thing we wanted to consider was people's understanding, and pretty much everyone can understand scalability and then be able to relate back to their own palate and their own preferences. So the acidity, the sweetness, the oak use, the body and the finish will always be there. And depending on the wine, obviously these will change individually for each wine, but we also thought that they would be a great way for people to quickly and immediately start to recognize nuances in their own palate, to recognize even just at a glance when they're shopping for wine. And if they've decided that they like a wine that has, say, 3.5 to 4 lemons, always, they really like that acidity in their wine, or half a lollipop is fine, but 2 lollipops is too much, And I think as simple as that sounds, it does give people a really quick way to go, actually, I like a little bit of sweetness, but I don't like too much. Or, hey, I love Chardonnays, but I've always really struggled to find a Chardonnay that doesn't have oak. All of a sudden, you've got the ability to straight away easily look at a wine on a shelf and say, well, that's a Chardonnay. It's got half an oak barrel or none. And all of a sudden, you can confidently pick up that bottle of wine and take it and drink it and enjoy it, knowing that you haven't picked up an oak bomb. And I think those were really important parts for us to be able to highlight where a wine sits structurally and how it's going to present itself to individuals when they're buying it as well.
Do you take suggestions from people when they have their own things they want added? Like for instance,
I want this wine to have its own emoji profile.
Well, no.
Wine
I mean, like
profile.
Kim on the show all the time has this saying. She likes to say she smells Barbie doll head or something in a wine, like weird things like that. Do you
Mark, we'll always consider suggestions and requests from hungry Wine-OJI consumers.
I have a thing that for me, Brettanomyces presents as a brand new Barbie doll. I don't know why.
Yep,
that's just me.
I don't play with a lot of Barbie dolls, to be honest. But
well, I don't anymore, but
yeah, I can see it's nostalgia, right?
I think so.
Wine speaks to people in so many different ways. That's that often wine can smell of mothballs, or if it's got that dustiness to it. There's so many things that people can relate to their own lives and personalities. And that is what's beautiful about wine, and we recognize that too. And we recognize there's always going to be a personal preference or a personal take on what we do. We're very open to suggestion with Wine-OJI and what can go in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier in the show, Josh, about the white wine emoji push nationally and internationally. People are pushing for more standard emojis to be put on. Have you been approached, or anyone in these committees who are looking for the white wine, the rosé wine emoji, come to you and say, hey, I can't wait for that. I need what you have. You have any approach you like that?
If you know anyone, please send them our way.
I think it's ridiculous that we don't have a white wine emoji yet.
Well, we do.
Yeah.
It's on Wine Emoji.
Mark, you're right. I mean, we've commented a couple of times on the threads of social media for a lot of the New Zealand wine industry, just for this one white wine emoji. And I think that it's all very good and well just having a glass with some white wine in it. And that's fine. And I can understand why people want this, for balance or whatever. But what we're doing probably is it's far more than that. And what we hope that producers and distributors will see that and recognize that. And we are, we're slowly building, we're doing and we are reaching more and more people, and we're working hard to spread the word to particularly New Zealand because we're operating locally currently. But that's the key with retail and distribution, is that we're looking to engage some of their international brands into our process and our profiling, so that one of the biggest ones in the trial, to be honest, was a pair of Riojas, a Gran Reserva and a Reserva, and the sales on those wines increased 300 to 400% because people could relate to the profiles, even if they didn't know what the grape variety was. And so for us, the big marker there was that international wines have a huge potential to increase volume and increase exposure in New Zealand, particularly if customers don't know what they are or what the grape varieties are. And so that was a really good nod and proof for us that Wine-OJI works in that regard to give consumers more information on something they don't understand, or they don't have someone on hand to give them that information.
I just wanted to follow up on the color thing, Josh. When looking at your profile, if a wine novice looks and says Bogle Vineyard Chardonnay and they still don't know Chardonnay is white, from your profile, is there anything on there that they can tell by looking at that color?
It's a white really wine versus something like a rosé.
Yeah, we've had that asked once before, and would we include, this is where maybe the white wine emoji and the red wine emoji might come in handy. Would we include this somewhere on the profile, somewhere on that profile of each wine? We have considered it. It's still something we won't say no to. And that is true. Yeah, it's a good question, because people that are new to wine may not know that a Chardonnay is a white grape and a white wine varietal versus a Cabernet Sauvignon being a red wine varietal.
So when they look at that printed out on the shelf, all the background colors are the same, correct?
Yeah, so they're always on a black background to accentuate the Wine-OJIs. And I guess if they're looking at it on the shelf, the bottle of wine will be above it.
Right.
So they'll pretty quickly work out that it's a white wine or a red wine or a resin.
When I first printed it out, I thought the white would have had a different color than the red on the background. So that's what I was kind of going with the color thing. So if I'm looking at the shelf, I see all whites, I see reds, I see pinks. That's where I was thinking it was going, but that was just you can give me the proceeds from that.
This is a brainstorming session too, didn't you know?
Yeah.
Love it.
We did get asked by a wine producer here in New Zealand if we could transfer the Wine-OJIs onto a white background for the card to suit their brand as well, so that it sort of was better incorporated into their branding, which we did do. And the Wine-OJIs didn't actually stand out as well on the background. So we've maintained the black, and actually even they agreed as well that they preferred the black background. But having an individual icon on each of or any kind of marketing material to decipher a red or white or rosé wine is something we wouldn't consider or not consider. But at the moment, we haven't actually got that yet.
And it's a little bit like the addition, originally we didn't have the addition of organic or biodynamic or vegan, but over time we realized that was quite important for people, and it is important for the wine world. More and more now people are wanting to know a little bit more detail about what's happening from the ground up. And so we're not opposed to anything new or adding anything to help consumers, hence having those biodynamic and organic little stickers that, help consumers make an informed choice.
It seems endless. You could put
I know,
alcohol,
I was just thinking that. I'm like, where does it stop? It just keeps, there's so much you could do.
The potential for Wine-OJI is absolutely endless. And we're just at the beginning of the journey, really. And we're very excited to see what's going to happen.
Well, it's such a fun concept and so fresh. Something that when we see these interesting new ideas coming into people's way of exploring wine and thinking about it and talking about it, we're always like, that's pretty cool. Like, it's nice to see that it's not all just classroom learning and, doing it the way that it has been done for the last 50 years. So I think that this is a really exciting new way to look at wine. And I hope that we start seeing some Wine-OJIs over here in the States as well.
We're just waiting on the trademark to come through, Kim.
Cool.
We've pretty much trademarked it across the rest of the world. We're just waiting on the States.
Just waiting on the US, huh?
But,
Sorry.
No. We feel it's got potential globally, and we feel it can help anyone out there really start to enjoy their wine more and have a bit of fun with it. Yeah, and start to get to the level we enjoy wine. We just want to share that passion, and we want people to love what we love.
I think it's great. It's exciting for people in the wine world to learn things a different way, and for all of us as teaching wine, I think this opens up all new opportunities to do different ways of teaching. And have you guys thought of doing anything on July 17th for World Emoji Day? Do you do anything special to conquer that?
We are now.
Well, it's one of those
I'm going to put that
days.
on my social media calendar now,
July 17th. We'll change it to
July
Wine-OJI Day.
Wine-OJI Day.
Wine-OJI Day.
I think.
Watch this space.
I think, Mark, you might.
Oh
see
my God,
something
I'm totally
on our
doing that. I'm going to put that on my social media calendar right now. What day is that?
July
Just on the
17th.
July 17th.
World or National Emoji Day.
Oh, so it's National Emoji Day. So it's the US then.
I've seen it both ways. It's one of those.
Okay,
We'll
well,
do it
hey,
on.
if it's international, then I think we all need to run with it.
It'll be international as of this year because
There we go.
We'll do it on both the 18th and the 17th, so we cover the states as well.
There we go.
There you go.
You are always on a different day than us.
yeah,
Correct.
true.
Well, this has been great. I'm so happy the listeners got to learn all about Wine-OJI.com. And Josh and Jessica, thank you for joining Kim and I today.
Been a real pleasure and privilege to talk to you and spread the love of Wine-OJI with you guys. So thank you for the opportunity and the chat. It was really inspiring conversations.
Yeah, thanks for taking an interest in what we're doing. We love what we do, and yeah, thanks for recognizing it as a exciting new way to communicate what we love.
Thanks for doing something new and cool. We love it.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening today to The Wonderful World of Wine. We have been your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Kim Simone, with our special guests from Wine-OJI.com, Josh Poynton and Jessica Wood. You can listen to us every week on Franklin Radio, WFPR 102.9. And as always, our past episodes can be found on SoundCloud and iTunes. Cheers.
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 Wine, wine.